Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story about neighborly disputes and some sweet, sweet karma. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Neighbor used HOA against me. Two can play that game. This happened a couple years ago, but I finally decided to post. I'll give the relevant origin story for our villain, Scumbag Steve. Roughly 6 years ago, my wife and I decided to move, pre-COVID times when everything was cheap still. Long story short, we couldn't find any pre-existing houses that we really liked, but did find the neighborhood where we currently live and built a house with the developer. As people do, we drove by every so often to look at the progress they were making on the house. One night, we stopped and went out to look at the hole in the ground, as they had just gotten ready to pour concrete for the basement walls. Here comes Steve, acting like a concerned neighbor because materials have been getting stolen. We explained that we'd be the new neighbors and had a brief conversation where he commented that he and another neighbor are the unofficial neighborhood watch. Missed that red flag at that moment, but we left feeling warm and fuzzy because the neighbors looked after each other. Unbeknownst to us, Steve is really just an overactive nosy Nelly and really just looking for ways to screw with people. A bit of foreshadowing now, some things that he's done to other neighbors are letting his dog poop and pee wherever she wants without cleaning it up, looking through neighbors' trash cans, asking about a neighbor's doorbell camera, how far it can pick stuff up, etc. I know I'm being a bit nitpicky here, but it tracks for him. We also found out later that he's a drunk, and he'll proudly proclaim/brag about how he beat his DUI that he got after a heated argument with his wife. He's also a scavenger/scrapper, so who's really stealing those materials, Steve? One day I decided that I want to start being a bit more self-sufficient and picked up some chickens to raise for eggs. Now, I'm really not that guy that wants to be annoying to my neighbors, but even then, the area that we live in is surrounded by farms and is farm-themed. I did my due diligence and checked town ordinances and the HOA guidelines that we were given and found no rules or ordinances against having chickens/poultry on your property. Backtracking slightly, when we signed our contract and went to settlement, we only received a one-page flyer that went over some basic items restricted by the HOA. No grilling in the front yard, no permanent basketball hoops in the street, no boats or RVs on a permanent basis, etc. There was no mention of anything about the types of animals you can or cannot have. So, working on the idea that I'm in the clear, I buy some chicks and begin raising them. I decided that since I had a kennel at my old house, we rented from my in-laws for a couple of years until we were ready to move, I'd go pick that up and set it up around my coop for the chickens to have some free roaming space. The kennel had 4 fence pieces that I could move on my own, but they were heavy, so I backed my truck up to my fence where the kennel was going to go in the backyard and started heaving them over. Steve sees me doing this and offers to lend a hand with getting them over the fence, so sure, why not? He asks why I need a dog kennel if I have a fence, to which I inform him it's not for my dogs, and for the chickens. I should have known that he was going to cause issues from here because the next thing he asks is, "Your HOA allows chickens?" It was phrased that way because he had lived there when the first developer of that neighborhood owned it, but then went bankrupt and my developer took over. It's the same HOA, but we didn't know that at the time. Anyway, I told him I didn't see anything in the paperwork provided to me regarding chickens, and that was that. Until the next day, Steve comes over with a loaf of bread from his mother's bakery that he occasionally helps at, and is making small talk when he brings up the chickens again. This time he's only talking to my wife about it, but he again brings up that his HOA doesn't allow it, and he was bummed about that. That's where the story should have ended. Maybe about a week later or so, I got a letter from the HOA. "It's come to our attention that you have chickens on your property. Per bylaw X, that's not allowed, and you have 30 days to remove them from your property." I was perplexed. How on earth did they find out about them, and why was I not provided with a copy of the HOA bylaws when I signed the contract for my house? The day after receiving the letter, my wife and I are on our way home from some errands when another neighbor that we're friendly with flags us down and tells us, "I don't know if you know, but SS went up to your fence and was taking pictures of your backyard." For context, there was an empty lot between SS's house and ours, but that finally clicked for us. Steve's freaking reported us to the HOA. Me being me, I'm not going to take this sitting down. I'm going to fight this. Some BS HOA, which is the developer's maintenance corporation, isn't going to tell me what I can or can't do on my property. Spoiler alert, they indeed did tell me what I couldn't do. Through a bunch of back and forth with the HOA, I get a copy of the bylaws and start picking through them with a fine-tooth comb. I find out that someone has sent in 7 pages worth of pictures of all the infractions of the HOA rules, including the picture of my coop. I should also mention that I was in hot water with the HOA when I had our fence installed because it wasn't a split rail fence with chicken wire, so it didn't match the aesthetic the developer wanted for the neighborhood. They never said another thing about it, though, and I ended up being the catalyst for everyone else doing whatever they wanted with fences. Also, since I'm being petty, literally any fence that's white vinyl is technically against the HOA bylaws, as it states that they can only be split rail, a maximum of 5 feet, and made of wood. But here's finally where my revenge comes in. You see, Steve has an area of his backyard that's blocked off by some wood privacy fencing that is not split rail and much taller than the 5-foot maximum. Oh, and there's some unsightly plant growth that's outside the HOA guidelines regarding the plants you can have on your property. Well, I think it's high time the HOA hears about these gross infractions of their bylaws, seeing as how we're all trying to do the right thing and follow the rules. So I snapped a couple pictures of the privacy fence, the eyesore plants, and the static line he has for his dog in the front yard. I felt a little bad for the dog initially, but he'd leave her out for hours and she'd run into the street at cars driving by, since the static line was long enough for her to get her whole body past the curb. I can't tell you how many almost heart attacks I had because I thought I was about to run over a dog. Well, I can tell you that probably about a week or so later, Steve got his nasty gram from the HOA informing him that he needed to move the static line and remove the privacy fence because I watched him with absolute glee as he removed his privacy fence. P.S. If you're wondering, we did initially move the chickens to our friend's farm that was right across the street from our neighborhood, but I've since moved the chickens back to my house since I lost a couple to a fox that was living in the woods behind his property. And our second story. Management says I'm losing my unused vacation days because of a new unpublished handbook rule. I work for a company with great pay and benefits, one of which was vacation days. I worked there for years without any performance or attendance issues. I was also an employee who would not work overtime. I give 100% while I'm there. That's all I have to offer. Other than that, no issues. Each year, I'd pre-planned my vacation days. We had to put our plans on a calendar for approval, and I wanted to receive my approval before confirming my plans, so I did everything as early as possible. I had no vacation request problems for years and did not hear of other employees having issues with their vacation time or pay. Then, one year, all of a sudden, after using all but 4 of my vacation days, management said I had no additional paid vacation time. I reviewed our online handbook, gathered my requested and approved time off, and checked my check stubs to verify the paid vacation days I'd taken thus far. I presented everything to management for research. My direct manager said he checked and I didn't have 4 additional vacation days. That wasn't good enough, so I asked him to forward it to his manager. His manager said the same thing. That wasn't good enough. Eventually, my concerns reached the center manager. The center manager called me into a meeting. I again presented my findings, showing I had 4 unused vacation days left. He then began discussing changes to our vacation policy while making eye contact and smiling. He turned his computer around to show me the new handbook they constructed reflecting the new vacation policy. Wait a minute, what? There's an online employee handbook, yet I'm supposed to go by a new handbook not known to employees? Make that make sense. I politely said, okay, and walked out. I removed my 4 days from the vacation calendar. I then began chatting with other employees to see the number of days they had taken for that year and the number of days they might have left. Conversations like, how was your vacation? How long did you stay? Are you choosing a different place to spend the rest of your vacation days? Asking these and related questions allowed me to calculate the number of vacation days they used or had remaining. I didn't find one other employee having my issue with vacation time. I waited a couple of months and filed a lawsuit while working there. Other employees didn't know about my lawsuit, at least not from me, but I'm sure management knew. The lawsuit discovery process revealed an email chain. The email chain showed the center manager directly asking Human Resources about my 4 unused vacation days, and Human Resources confirming I had 4 unused vacation days. The center manager used a fictitious new handbook to cover his and other management actions, denying my unused vacation time. Shortly after that, we settled, and they paid thousands for 4 unused vacation days. I had to resign, of course, and the center manager and other management lost their positions, retired, or quit. All I wanted was my unused paid vacation time. But what I received was much more. Sorry you had to resign, but I love the fact you sued them. I'm glad that there are still people out there who can stand up for themselves. And our last story. Revenge on the neighbors. So this happened to my dad a few years ago. He lives in an old farmhouse that unfortunately does not have a window in the bathroom, so my dad wanted to cut a hole in the wall and put one in, for obvious reasons. Now, if you want to add a window that points directly to the property of someone else, you have to ask the person who owns said property, in our country at least. Since the window would only let us see their driveway and we would have put frosted glass there anyway, we figured it wouldn't be a problem. My dad went over and asked nicely for their permission. They absolutely blew at him. Under no circumstances would they allow this, and they even called our building authority to tell them what my dad asked and that they wanted the authority to check on him in case he put it there anyway. We still don't have a window in our bathroom to this very day. A few months after all that, the same neighbor suddenly stands in front of our door telling us that he would like to build a carport in his driveway, asking if it would be okay with us since he would have to connect said carport to our house. My dad looked at them in disbelief for like 5 seconds, then laughed, told them no, and shut the door. We ended up putting a ventilator in the bathroom to suck the stink out. Their cars are still exposed to wind and weather. I wouldn't want their crappy carport connected to my house regardless. The bathroom window had absolutely nothing to do with them, nor would it have affected them in any way. Oh well. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.